Well, look, this was an ironclad promise from Scott Morrison to enshrine in law anti-discrimination protections for Australians of faith. Now we're told there's a deadlock inside the coalition over the draft legislation centring around the inclusion of a so-called fallow clause, which would ban employers sacking staff for expressing their religious views. Once again, it's a reported posse of self-styled modern liberals who are putting up the resistance. Andrew Bragg, Tim Wilson, Dave Sharma and others. The leader of One Nation in New South Wales, Mark Latham, is a figure who's fought hard to protect the rights of people of faith. He joins me now from Sydney. OK, Mark, well, give us your take here, because I don't know what's so controversial about making sure people don't get sacked for expressing their religious views.
Well, yes, Peter, and particularly away from the workplace on something nothing to do with their work. That was the situation with Israel Folau, where he articulated on social media a paraphrasing of the Bible, the oldest, most popular and most important book in human history. You wouldn't think there was much wrong with that. And he said a bunch of sinners were going to hell. There was a long list of them. I must confess I was on there a couple of times. I suppose we all were. But if you don't believe in hell and you don't think you're really a sinner, you'd have to be manufacturing your outrage and offence to say that Folau, a practising Christian, a born-again Christian, well away from his workplace at Rugby Australia, nothing to do with playing rugby, wasn't allowed to articulate his Christian beliefs without being sacked. And he was sacked at the bequest of one of their sponsors, Qantas. So it was an outrageous breach of the basic human right of freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And I heard you mention Tim Wilson was on that list. Wasn't he the so-called Freedom Commissioner at the Human Rights Commission? He got appointed there by George Brandis. You'd think he'd come in there with a small L liberal attitude to say, well, people can practice their faith and articulate their religious viewpoint away from the workplace and not face the sort of punishment that Folau experienced. So the proposition is a nonsense. And if you take the Folau clause out, you really do gut a bill like this. I've heard reports they're trying to find bipartisanship with Labor's Mark Dreyfus. Well, you might as well find bipartisanship with the Greens and you know, the anti-religious bigots that are out there. So, you know, I think they need to be realistic about this and recognise that religious freedom is non-negotiable.
I tell you what, I mean, if the coalition keeps looking for agreement on everything, that they take their brand out of the marketplace, because politics is a battle of ideas, and all the big issues between the left and the right are hard fought over. They should be hard fought over. It shouldn't be just kumbaya in the chamber. We want that push and shove, and we want that conviction in our politicians. I think that's to their detriment. I've got to ask you, I started the show talking about the Malcolm Turnbull, Anthony Albanese sort of pylon, playing the politics of Morrison, but actually throwing our country under the bus in preference to the French view of the world about the Prime Minister's honesty. Forget Malcolm Turnbull. I mean, he's yesterday. I think this is detrimental to Anthony Albanese. He's pinning for the top job, and he doesn't look like he's backing Australia.
Well, that's the appearance. I think Albanese, Peter's taken the viewpoint, which you can do in politics, that my enemy's enemy is my friend. And he's buddied up with Macron from the left of politics in France, a soulmate. But you can do that, but he's buddied up with someone who is anti-Australia. So Albanese is siding with someone actively anti-Australia on the international scene. I think that's a mistake. It's an overreach. And at the end of the day, France is not our defence ally. We've done much more for France than they've ever done for us, particularly during the two world wars. France has a pretty disgraceful record in the Asia-Pacific region with nuclear testing and the blowing up of the Rainbow Warrior. And at the end of the day, the Morrison government, whatever the text messages were and the ins and outs, broke a commercial agreement for which France will be amply compensated. So what's Macron going on about? And most particularly, what's Albanese going on about?
Spot on, Mark Latham. Beautifully said. Leave it there. See you next week.